Touchdown number 3 could have been touchdown number 4. We may touch on that coming up later in this segment. It's a Friday edition of Pro Football Talk Live, Peacock, Sirius XM 85, Sky Sports NFL, and wherever you get your podcasts, however you get your podcast. If you do get your podcast today, you will hear me along with, after a brief break, he went out to Colorado to hang out with Deion Sanders. Hanging out with Deion Sanders. Look
Not
at me,
really.
I'm Peter King. Here he is. There he is. He got to be around the aura, the magic, the mystique that is Colorado.
Yeah. I guess I wasn't invited into Mystique, but I saw it. It was fun. It was actually fascinating. And I wonder if that's where college football is headed. But I know where we're headed last night, and that is that, can Justin Fields now engender, after the last 5 days, can Justin Fields engender some thoughts of never mind among all of the Bears fandom? After, in the span of 2 days, being a 68% passer with 8 touchdowns, 1 interception, not just relying on his legs. This is the product of Justin Fields, I think. 2 things: being with Luke Getsy a second year, and basically feeling a lot more comfortable in the offense right now, not just feeling a lot more comfortable in the running game. And also, I wish I could read all of these things that I've read over the last few weeks on the air about Justin Fields throwing to a guy who's not a real number 1 receiver. To me, I think DJ Moore looks like a real number 1 receiver to me, Florio.
Oh, he definitely looked like a real one last night. 8 catches, 230 yards, 3 touchdowns. You saw that clip there of what looked like another touchdown that somehow, some way was called out of bounds. We've seen that happen before. A couple of weeks back, Amari Cooper was called out of bounds when he clearly was not against the Tennessee Titans. But Peter, could the explanation be this simple? Now, let me put it in context first. The Bears had lost 14 in a row, longest streak actively in the NFL, longest streak in franchise history, 347 days since the Bears last won a game. Could it be, given what's happened the last 5 days, and ignoring for now the fact that they blew a 28-7 lead and lost to the Broncos, but what Justin Fields did week 4, week 5, phenomenal, especially in comparison to the first 3 weeks. Is this as simple as something along the lines of what Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers coach, explained earlier in the week? It takes time to get your offense up to speed. Limited offseason workouts in comparison to what they used to be. Limited physicality of training camp practices. Limited opportunities to get those 5 blockers to work in unison to help unleash an offense. Is it as simple as it just took a few weeks for whatever Luke Getsy is trying to get Justin Fields to become to begin to flourish? Is it that simple? Based on the last 2 games, maybe that's the explanation. It just took a little while for all of this to click because it now takes a little while for offenses to get clicking in the NFL.
Well, I think that's probably part of it, Mike, but I think it's also, one of the biggest factors is that over the last 5 days, the Chicago Bears have faced the 31st and 32nd scoring defenses in football. The Denver Broncos are the worst, and stunningly, the Washington Commanders are the second worst. Now, Mike, you would have never thought before the year that the Commanders might have the worst defense in the NFC. And I'm not saying that it's over and that's what they're going to be, but this has been a really, really disappointing defense right now. The last 4 weeks, the Washington Commanders have allowed 36 points per game. everybody talks about Ron Rivera might be on the hot seat and all that. I mean, Jack Del Rio's seat ought to be in blazes right now. The defensive coordinator of Washington. It's intolerable. The last 4 games, they're giving up, Mike, essentially 145 yards a game rushing. And with that stout front, it's simply unacceptable. So to me, when I look at this, I agree with you. It does take time, but they're also facing 2 lousy defenses. And, incredibly, because we thought Denver, that was going to carry them while the offense got used to Sean Payton. But, Vance Joseph and Jack Del Rio, their units have both been awful. And I think the Bears, that's part of why the Bears have been so prolific the last 2 games.
Well, and when you consider that the Commanders essentially have 2 defensive experts at high levels of the coaching staff. You've got Ron Rivera, who was a successful defensive coordinator before he became a head coach, and he's a 2-time coach of the year. And then you throw in Jack Del Rio, and those 2 minds coming together can't get better performance out of a defense that seems to have the parts, and they can't make it work. That does not bode well for the future of Ron Rivera. When you've got Eric Bieniemy, who is getting a lot of buzz, a lot of praise, a lot of notice, and you've got a new ownership group that hired none of these people, that is thinking about the future, the very easy thing to do is hand the whistle to Eric Bieniemy and move forward after the season, if that's what Josh Harris, Magic Johnson, and company are inclined to do. And that's the direction it's pointing right now. Still a long way to go, Peter, but they're 2-3. They've lost 3 in a row. They've got 12 games left. They've got 2 against the Cowboys, another against the Eagles, 49ers, Seahawks, Dolphins. It's going to be hard for this team to finish on the right side of 500. And if they don't, how do you not expect major changes to be made by somebody who did not buy the team for the privilege of employing Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio? Josh Harris bought the team because he wanted a team, and he's going to employ whoever he wants to employ when the time comes to make big decisions. And if the team is not on the right side of 500, those decisions are not going to be made in a way that Ron Rivera will agree with, although he gets it because he's lived through it. He's lived through it with David Tepper. You see what happens. Yeah. New owner comes in. New owner has his or her own agenda. That's the way it works in pro sports.
I think a couple of things right there, Mike. Number one, I think the timing of this sale and the delay of this sale, honestly, might have saved Ron Rivera's job for another year. Because I think that, coming into this year, had this sale been complete last November or December, which obviously is hard to do because of the way the NFL calendar falls. But with that ridiculously long investigation by Mary Jo White and then the results of it, because that obviously helped push Daniel Snyder out, all the findings of that investigation and the congressional inquiry into the franchise, all that. But had this been accelerated a little bit, Ron Rivera might not be coaching this team right now. Who knows who might be? Sean Payton, pick a name. I don't know. But I think the other point to make is that all this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. I noticed that in the last 2 games, one of the guys who's really helped victimize this defense, honestly, is Emmanuel Forbes. And when Washington picked him midway through the first round last April, everybody said, oh my God, this guy weighs like 168 pounds. He's thin as a rail. Can he survive an NFL season? Well, the physical part of it is not necessarily what, his stature is not the problem right now. He's just getting killed out there. And he got killed again by DJ Moore last night, just like he got beat badly on Sunday. And so to me, I understand. Let's get on Ron Rivera and all that. But I think, the personnel side of this doesn't look great either. But I'll say one other thing. This quarterback, Sam Howell, is one impressive dude. You look at him the last 2 weeks, how much he's gotten hit, and some of the throws he's delivered. I think one thing that Washington, at least it seems, doesn't have to really worry about. Remember a year ago when we were all saying, boy, good thing Detroit has those 2 high picks. Next year in the draft, they can go get a quarterback because Jared Goff isn't the guy. By the end of the year, Jared Goff had made believers out of everyone. And they said, hey, he is the guy. But now I think we're kind of saying the same thing about Washington. At the beginning of the year, I don't think anybody thought Sam Howell was the guy. He is really starting to look like the genuine item right now in a bad situation in Washington.
And that's the worst news for Ron Rivera. If it looks like Sam Howell's getting it done under the tutelage of Eric Bieniemy, it becomes a much easier decision to say, we're going to make Bieniemy the head coach of the team. This guy's been overdue for years. He came in here in 1 year, and even with a really bad defense, he made the offense go. Your point on Emmanuel Forbes, at some juncture, it's incumbent on the coaching staff to get the guy off the field if he just can't play. If he is the glaring weak link of the 11-man chain, you got to get him off the field.
Night.
Well,
yeah.
Well, you got to get him off the
field.
They
might have waited too long, but they did get him off the field.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.